Some truths aren't hated because they're wrong. They're hated because accepting them would collapse familiar beliefs. These are truths many women don't want to hear. Not because they are weak, but because once heard, they force a confrontation with past choices, past hopes, and past illusions. The question is simple, but uncomfortable. If the truth makes us uneasy, do we avoid it or face it? For years, women have been told one comforting message. Just be yourself, and everything will work out. It sounds empowering, but it's also dangerous, because it quietly promises that the world will adjust itself to our emotions. In reality, the world doesn't run on feelings. It runs on patterns, incentives, and consequences. Advice that only helps us feel better, but not decide better, is no longer guidance. It becomes emotional anesthesia. And when we numb discomfort for too long, we forget to ask the most important question. What exactly keeps hurting, and why does it keep happening? This story isn't told from a place of judgment, nor from the position of a victim. It's told from the perspective of a long-term observer of human behavior. Watching how women love. Vietnam's top text-to-speech solution from VB.vn. How they choose. How they convince themselves that this time will be different. Like a psychological detective. I don't trust words alone. I don't even trust emotions in isolation. I watch patterns, repeated behaviors, and the outcomes they quietly produce over time. Because behavior, when observed long enough, never lies. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. Emotions are not reliable decision-making tools. The human brain operates on two systems. One is fast, emotional, instinctive, reactive. The other is slow, logical, reflective, analytical. In romantic situations, the fast system often takes control. It prioritizes being desired, being chosen, feeling special. When that happens, the brain releases dopamine, the same chemical involved in addiction. And this is critical to understand. People don't become addicted to a person. They become addicted to how they feel around that person. This explains why intelligent women often repeat the same relationship patterns. Not because they don't know better, but because their brain rewards the wrong signals. Another uncomfortable truth. The brain doesn't seek long-term happiness. It seeks familiar emotional states. If someone grew up in instability, their nervous system learns to treat instability as normal. When faced with calm, predictable love, the brain may interpret it as boredom. Not because something is wrong with the partner, but because peace feels unfamiliar. This isn't a flaw, but if left unexamined, it becomes an unconscious loop. One that feels personal, but is largely neurological. One of the most common, but rarely admitted, signals is this. You constantly reinterpret someone's behavior to make it feel acceptable. They don't text back. You say, they're probably busy. They break promises. You think, everyone messes up sometimes. Once or twice, that might be true. But when you repeat the same internal justification over and over, it's no longer empathy. It's self-hypnosis. Another subtle signal appears when your investment keeps increasing, while the other person's effort stays exactly the same. You call it patience, or loyalty, or maturity. But neurologically, your brain is playing a dangerous game. If I give enough, they'll finally see my value. Behavioral science calls this the sunk cost fallacy. The more you invest, the harder it becomes to walk away. Not because the relationship is healthy, but because leaving would force you to admit, I misjudged this. The third signal is quieter, but more damaging. You slowly become a modified version of yourself. Less expressive, more agreeable, careful not to ask difficult questions, careful not to be too much. You call it growth, but your body knows the truth. Your nervous system stays tense, hyper alert, always bracing for rejection. Some will argue, all relationships require effort. That's true, but effort that builds intimacy, AI voice powered by VB.vn, is very different from effort that earns permission to stay. One expands you, The other shrinks you. Why do smart women still fall into these patterns? Not because they lack intelligence, but because the brain is vulnerable to powerful biases. The first is confirmation bias. We search for evidence that supports what we want to believe. Negative signals are minimized. Rare positive moments are magnified. The second is romantic narrative bias. Stories teach us that love must be difficult, painful, something to fight for. But movies end at the climax. They don't show 10 years later, when unresolved tension becomes quiet resentment. The most dangerous bias is tying self-worth to being chosen. When someone doesn't fully commit, the brain rarely thinks, "This person isn't capable." Instead, it thinks, "I'm not enough." At that point, love stops being about connection. It becomes about proving value. And here's the uncomfortable reversal. Some relationships don't fail because you weren't good enough. They fail because you tried too hard to compensate for someone else's limitations. Here is the hardest truth to accept. Not everyone is capable of loving deeply, even if they enjoy being loved. Some people love only when it's convenient. Some love only the version of you that doesn't challenge them. Some love admiration, not intimacy. If you must continuously adjust yourself to be acceptable, that isn't love. That's negotiation. The painful realization is this: many women weren't hurt because they were abandoned. They were hurt because they recognized the truth early and chose not to trust it. The solution isn't becoming colder or closing yourself off. The solution is changing how you evaluate relationships. Don't ask, "Do I love this person?" Ask, "Can I remain fully myself here?" Don't focus on promises. Observe patterns of investment. Don't ask, "If I try harder, will this change?" Ask instead, "If I stop trying, what remains?" This perspective doesn't make you heartless. It makes you clear-minded. Some truths don't need immediate agreement. They only need to be heard. You may not be ready to accept them yet. That's fine. Awareness doesn't arrive all at once. But once the seed is planted, the next time you find yourself explaining away your own pain, you'll remember this conversation. And maybe, just maybe, you'll pause a little earlier than before. If you want to continue exploring the hidden mechanics of human psychology, the truths that aren't meant to wound, but to help you choose more clearly, subscribe to the channel. In the next video, we'll explore why being overly kind often leads to being taken for granted in relationships. Not to change who you are, but to help you stop doubting yourself.